Tramp bashing, Snow eliminated.
So 40 Crip, I'm tripping. Off the back on Vernon Avenue, I'm tripping.
Welcome to Boys in the Hood TV. Today we tapping in the streets of LA, and we're gonna be talking about the Rollin 40 Crips versus the Rollin 60 Crips, and the Hoovers, and a few other rivals that went up against the 40s. And we're gonna be touching on different cases throughout history. The Rollin 40 Crips are a predominantly African-American gang in South LA. Their hood stretches from Vernon Avenue to Lemert between Crenshaw and Fig. Within the 40s, they got cliques like Darkside, Parkside, Western, and the Avenues. The 40s are allied with the Neighborhood Crips, Raymond Avenue, and Rollin 30 Crips. But they were also formerly allies with the Rollin 60 Crips up until they had a war, and we're gonna touch on that later in the video. But they beef with multiple hoods like the Rollin 20 Neighborhood Bloods, the Black P Stones, Harvard Park Brims, the Hoovers, and many other gangs. At one point, the 40s and the Faux Trey Hoovers actually got along, but that would all change back in the late 80s.
Faux Trey, we was more like family. We never had a problem with the Faux Treys. The Fighters Hoovers was really trying to recruit everybody that was at Vermont Square Park area. The Faux Trey, they really didn't try to recruit us. They just hung out with us.
So y'all was cool before the war.
Cool. Right.
On July 11, 1989, Rollin 40s Crip member named Troy Mitchell was standing in the upstairs nearby apartment complex on 43rd and Kansas Street. Down below were a group of Faux Trey Hoover members, which included Jerry Knox, aka Judah Bean, Maurice Taylor, 8 Ball, and a man named Big Black. Mitchell saw them standing on the corner, and then he yelled out, "Fuck Hoover." Moments later, Judah Bean and the Faux Trey members ran up the stairs of Mitchell apartment building and stomped them out. Not long after this, Judah Bean and the Faux Treys were standing outside when the Rollin 40s, including Mitchell, would roll up in the car and start dumping. All Faux Treys would be hit, but everybody would survive the hit. As Judah Bean laid on the ground, his girlfriend would come up and try to help him into the car to take him to the hospital. But once in the car, Judah would tell her to stop in front of the Rollin 40s member apartment complex, which is where Mitchell stayed at. At around 1:15 a.m., Judah's girlfriend put in front of the apartment complex, and standing around the apartment complex was the Rollin 40s, including Mitchell, who was holding a shotgun. And Judah yelled out the window that he dared them to shoot him. And as he said this, he stepped out of the vehicle, and moments later, Taylor, who was holding that shotgun, opened fire, hitting Judah multiple times as he collapsed on the ground. His girlfriend then immediately took off, leaving Judah on the ground. And also in that moment, all the Rollin 40s dispatched and everybody ran to their vehicles. And according to court documents, Rollin 40s Crip Mitchell, who also toted the shotgun, would make a U-turn in his vehicle and intentionally run over Judah Bean as he lied on the ground, crushing his chest. And that injury alone was the fatal blow that killed Faux Trey Judah Bean. Eventually, Troy Mitchell would be arrested and would be charged of the murder of Faux Trey member Judah Bean. But the 40s didn't just have war with rival gangs in LA, but they also had beef with the LAPD. We're gonna jump all the way to the 2000s. And on March 13, 2005, around 11 p.m., Rollin 40s Crip member Troy Dyer and another man named Brandon Dixon were driving down Vermont Avenue in a green Hyundai when the police attempted to pull them over. The driver, Brandon Dixon, would then increase speed, leading the LAPD on a high-speed chase. Then 40s Crip member Dyer would lean out the window of the car with a Tech 9 in hand. He started letting off shots, a total of 5 shots shooting at the police officers. The driver, Dixon, would then turn off the headlights, forcing the cops only to be able to follow by the brake lights. Eventually, Dyer and Dixon would abandon the car as they entered into the Hoovers neighborhood. And this would lead to a foot chase with Dyer and Dixon eventually being caught early hours in the next morning. Both Dixon and Dyer would be convicted of premeditated murder of the 2 LAPD officers. On October 2nd, 2006, Rollin 40s Crip Ernest Creighton was standing near Western and Vernon when he spotted another man across the street and started throwing up the 40 sign. Moments later, a red Chevy Cobalt would pull up next to Creighton, which was full of 7'6" East Coast Crips. East Coast Crip member named Christopher Mathis, aka C-Lo, hopped out the car to the passenger seat. Mathis then approached Creighton and shot him 6 times point-blank range, and Creighton would die right there at the scene as the East Coast Crips would hop back in the vehicle and drive off. Later, Christopher Mathis, aka C-Lo, and a man named Robbins will be arrested and convicted of the murder of Ernest Creighton. About a year later, on December 2007, Rollin 40s member named Britton Emil Riley went to a party with Jared, Tamika, and Sheree. After the party, the group decided to stop by a nearby gas station. While at the gas station, Sheree and Tamika got out the car and Riley stayed in the car. But inside the gas station, Sheree and Tamika would get into an altercation with some Fruitown brims. After this altercation, Sheree and Tamika would then get back into the car, and while they were driving, Tamika would tell Riley about the altercation. Riley would then get upset and decide to head back to the gas station looking for the Fruitown brims. Tamika would spot the brims across the street at a Walgreens, leaving the parking lot. Riley would then follow the two vehicles as they left the Walgreens parking lot. Immediately, he would pull up next to one of the vehicles and he would open fire, shooting through the window. Next, he would drive up to the other car and he would open fire once again, this time shooting and killing a 15-year-old Malayla Ransom and striking her with a bullet to the head. Immediately, the 40s fled the scene. Eventually, Riley and the other 40 members would be arrested and be convicted of murder and 5 counts of attempted murder. Years later, on November 25, 2011, well-respected Rollin 40s Crip Joseph Gilbert, aka 40 Joe, was at a party in the Jungles, which is a rival hood. Now, the details are pretty scarce on why he was there, but there's different rumors why he was and what he was doing there. But according to this Pyru member named King Pill, he tells his side of the story and what really went down, allegedly.
Y'all, some real brief LA history real quick. It was a real respectable 40 Crips. Used to fear this nigga, and so he used to go to different hoods, blood hoods, every hood nigga talking crazy. This night he in the mother Jungles talking crazy, talking how he normally talks. But this night it was a nigga from my hood, OG 45 Bix, talking crazy, say something to him. The homie poke him up, fresh out, poke him up with a knife, kill him. 40s blame the BPSs.
Regardless of whether or not this account is true, according to authorities, Joe was stabbed in the Baldwin Hills hood, and he will be pronounced dead at around 3:55 a.m. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Rollin 40s and the Rollin 60s were two neighborhood Crips that were closely aligned. But this would change forever after a function with the two hoods. On August 4, 2013, a party was being thrown in the Rollin 100s Crip territory on 11125 Western Avenue. Multiple Rollin Crip hoods were in attendance at the party: the 40s, the 60s, the 100s, the 90 Crips. Like most parties and functions, there's always going to be some issues and conflicts, but nothing more than that. But later that night, Rollin 40s Crip, Tiny Crip Crazy from Dark Side, would have words with a member from Rollin 60s, allegedly over a female. Eventually, punches were being thrown, and it said that Tiny Crip Crazy from Dark Side won the fight. But in the midst of all this chaos, the Rollin 60s Crip would return back into the party with a pistol and start blasting, and Tiny Crip Crazy was hit multiple times and would die at the scene. This murder would set these two hoods against each other down a path of destruction that nobody saw coming. Just 2 days later, on August 6th, Mitchell Graves was walking on the sidewalk at around 10:45 p.m. on the 6200 block of Madden Avenue in Hyde Park, when two unidentified men in a light-colored vehicle were parked on 62nd Street. When two men got out of the vehicle and approached Graves and shot him at point-blank range multiple times, killing him where he stood. Just weeks later, on August 27, 2013, Antonio Lee Riley, a.k.a. Crafty Blue, Trayvon Jackson, a.k.a. Shady Huck, both known Rollin 60 Crips, were standing outside of an apartment complex in Hyde Park at around 4 p.m. when a light-colored vehicle pulled up and a Rollin 40s member hung out the window and started shooting. More than 20 shots were fired, killing both Riley and Jackson on the scene. A third man was shot also, but he would survive his wounds. Not too long later, two Rollin 40 Crips would be arrested for these murders: Racine, a.k.a. 4 Extra, and another 40s member. But eventually, the cases will be dropped and dismissed. The 40s just a year later will be on the hunt looking for other rivals also. On June 2014, at about 7:25 p.m., Rollin 40s Crip Leroy Roberts and Lamont Lewis were in the Van Ness Gangster's Blood neighborhood. Lewis stayed in the car as Roberts walked the block. Roberts spotted three men talking: Demetrius Bonner, Reginald Pitts, and Chris Hooks. He immediately put out his pistol and pulled the trigger, but the gun jammed. The three men started running. Rollin 40s member Lewis attempted to chase down Demetrius, but Demetrius ended up hopping the fence. Roberts then started chasing the other man, Pitts, trying to unjam his gun. While running, Pitts would slip and fall on the ground, and Roberts would finally get his gun unjammed, and he would stand over Pitts and fire 5 to 6 shots at him, killing him at the scene. Both Roberts and Lewis would eventually be arrested and be convicted of the murder. Just only months later, the 40s is still active in the city, whether it be against rivals or anybody that they saw as an easy come-up. On December 17, 2014, Rollin 40s member Antoine Bellows, a.k.a. Insane No. 5, spotted two Hispanic men outside of a store near a taco stand. Miguel Bernal, and Jesus Vasquez. Miguel will go back inside the store to grab some cigarettes. Rollin 40s Crip member Bello and a female named Nicole will then approach Vasquez. Bello will pull out his gun and start pistol whipping and kicking Vasquez as Nicole went through his pockets. Vasquez then was able to get up and started running to a nearby van trying to hide, and Bello chased behind him. Vasquez and Bello would then start to fight over the gun, and Miguel came running outside after he heard the commotion, when suddenly the gun will go off, and Vasquez is shot one time in his head as he collapsed to the ground. Bello and Nicole would immediately flee the scene as Miguel would run to Vasquez's side. Vasquez would die at the scene, but eventually both Bello and Nicole would be arrested and convicted of the murder and robbery of Jesus Vasquez. About 3 years later, the 40s was also at war with the Brims. On February 23, 2016, an OG Harvard Park Brim by the name of Kenneth Durden was gunned down at Harvard Park. So 3 days later, at around midnight, after leaving Buffalo Wild Wings, Rollin 40s Crip Jermaine Williams, aka Strong, and a female named Elliston were driving down Southwest Ave and 42nd Street in a black BMW, when suddenly a white Infiniti FX35 pulled up beside them, when Egan and Baby Stretcher Fruit Time Brims would pull up and open fire, shooting Williams and Elliston both. Williams was hit 4 times when one fatal shot went to his back. The white Infiniti fled down Southwestern Avenue. Paramedics would arrive to the scene where Williams was bleeding to death, and they would take him to the hospital where he would be eventually pronounced dead. Elliston, the female passenger, she would survive the shooting. But eventually, Baby Stretch, aka Jamar Wilson, would be arrested and convicted of the murder. Now the 40s, just like the 60s and any other LA gang, there is always eternal beefs that can usually be settled with a friendly fade, but that's not always the case. On June 16, 2016, Rollin's 40 Crip, Devon Carr, aka Fo Boy, went looking for a well-known 40s member, Fo Extra. Word had been going around that Fo Extra had threatened to kill Carr. So Carr went to Fo Extra's house waiting for him, and he saw Fo Extra driving down the street. Carr would pull out his pistol and open fire, shooting Fo Extra, causing his car to crash and hit a light pole. Although wounded, Fo Extra would survive the shooting. 2 months after this incident, on August 13, 2016, Rollin 40s member Jeremiah Shaw, aka Spody Face, will be shot and killed in Mid-City on West Pico and South Orange Drive, which is in Mansfield Gangster Crip neighborhood. It's a lot of rumors surrounding Spody Face's death. Some say the shooters were from Black P Stones, and others say they had to do with some eternal beef. But not long after this incident, Devon Carr, aka Fo Boy, will be back at it again with some beef with other 40s member. On October 24th, 2016, Devon Carr believed that another 40s member by the name of Victor Miller had been stealing from him. So Carr confronted Miller, and after some words were exchanged, Carr would pull out a gun and shoot Miller multiple times. Although injured, Miller was able to drive himself to a nearby gas station where the police were called, and he was able to get to a hospital. Devon Carr would be arrested for the shooting of Fo Extra and also of Victor Miller, but he will be acquitted of both charges. But he will be convicted of a shooting that took place earlier in that year against a man on Expressway, where he opened fire on a son and a father in a truck. Later that year, on August 16th at around 2 p.m., Rollin 40s Crip Tyrone Foster will be riding through a known 5-deuce Hoover and 5-1 trouble spot on South Vermont and 55th Street at a strip mall parking lot where there were about 12 people total standing outside talking and just kicking it by a nearby barbershop. Foster would then head down a nearby alley and hide behind a car. Then he would immediately jump out with his pistol and start shooting at the crowd. People started running immediately, but a man by the name of Robert Ellis, who was waiting to go inside the barbershop, would be hit once in the chest and he would die at the scene. About 2 months later, Tyrone Foster will be arrested for the murder of Ellis, and he will be eventually convicted of that murder also and sentenced to life in prison. Now the beef with the Rollin 40s and the 60s still was going on. On July 1st, 2018, a well-respected OG from the Rollin 40s, Gary Dorton, aka Twin, attended a Rollin 40s baseball game at Peak Park in San Pedro. Dorton, now a known community activist, a gang intervention who was trying to lead the youth away from the streets, would find himself in the crossfire. During the game, Xavier Chico Guerrero, a Rollin 60s OG member, would show up. At this point in time, the 60s and 40s were still at war, so the 40s asked Chico to leave, and he eventually did. Later that evening, after the game, Dorton decided to go visit his grandmother, and then after that, he went up to a friend's house that was just up the block named Jackson. At around 7:30 p.m., Dorton stood outside near his truck talking to friends as a black Mazda full of Rollin 60 members rolled up. 2 members of Rollin 60s would hop out and start shooting. As Dorton tried to flee, he would be hit multiple times with one shot piercing his heart. By the time the paramedics arrived, he had no pulse, and he was transported to the hospital where he was pronounced dead.
Down on July 1st, killed, police say, at the hands of 3 young black men, the same type of boys Dorton dedicated his life to helping.
The youngest of the 3 suspects was 17 when he was arrested, 18 now. He's being held without bail. The 2 other suspects, one's for $7 million, the other has an $8 million bail, and all 3 of them could face life in prison.
But years later, a brazen shooting would take place at Fix and Soul Kitchen restaurant in Los Angeles.
News now at 11. Gunfire erupting in the heart of downtown L.A. A man is dead after police say someone walked into one of the restaurants at L.A. Live and opened fire.
Yes, police now telling us they believe the suspect and the victim knew each other, and that investigation is still ongoing. Behind me, take a look at this. You can see part of Figueroa is still blocked off this evening. It's up here on my left-hand side. We have several investigators. They've been out here for several hours. But it's inside that restaurant where those shots were fired. And investigators now still trying to piece together exactly what happened. Started after 6 p.m. when the suspect, described as an adult male, entered Fix and Soul Kitchen and opened fire. Police arrived to find one victim, a man in his 20s, struck by the gunfire. He was taken to the hospital where he died from his injuries. The cell phone video captured by tourists at a nearby hotel showing the chaos that follows.
On November 28th of 2023, at around 6 p.m., Rollin 40s Crip member Santana Kelly, a.k.a. Big Iceman, and a man by the name of Philip Clark will pull outside the restaurant in a white Ford Escape. Dressed in an all-black tracksuit, wearing a fitted cap that said "No F's Given," will then walk inside the restaurant in front of a room full of diners and employees who will walk up behind a man named Sidney Morris, who was sitting by himself eating, and he would pull out his firearm and allegedly would shoot Morris directly in the back of the head.
Investigators still aren't saying why the victim was targeted.
Mr. Morris was murdered in what appears to be an unprovoked and targeted attack.
Police say there are 2 suspects, Philip Clark and Santana Kelly.
This murder shocked the community and instilled fear in our residents and visitors that such a brutal and calculated murder could happen in such a public place.
Investigators say the suspects are documented gang members and are now in custody. Officials describe Morris as a community leader devoted to equity and diversity. Investigators say this was not a random act, but won't comment about a motive.
Again, we're still working through a bunch of leads and evidence to try to figure out exactly why this happened. But at this time, we're not willing to release anything publicly right now.
Now, as the years went on, the beef with the 40s and 60s would tone down some. Although not completely, we would see over the years some 40 members and 60s members able to get along. I want to thank everybody for tapping in and watching this video, and I'll see y'all next time.